Republicans have weighed in on the formal impeachment inquiry of President Trump. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy spoke directly after Speaker Nancy Pelosi made the announcement Tuesday. He said Pelosi, quote, does not speak for America when it comes to this issue.
This election is over. I realize 2016 did not turn out the way Speaker Pelosi wanted it to happen, but she cannot change the laws of this Congress. She cannot unilaterally decide we're in an impeachment inquiry. What she said today made no difference of what's been going on. It's no different than what Nadler's been trying to do. It's time to put the public before politics. Thank you.
So for more insight into the GOP response, let's bring in Republican strategist Joseph Pinion. Joseph, thank you so much for being with us.
Good to be here.
So it's been a busy day.
Just your typical Tuesday.
Just your typical Tuesday. What did you make of Kevin McCarthy's response there? And is that going to be the way Republicans are going to handle this going forward? Look, Democrats have been trying to get this president out of office since the election. This is just one more misguided attempt.
Look, I think that this slow march to impeachment's been going on for 3 years, obviously even going back to before President Trump even took office. So I think that that's not going to change. I think that both sides are pretty much dug in. I think Democrats believe that they've found a new lever here that they can try to use to try to see if they can sway public opinion. But I would only caution that when you look at the extensive amount of time and effort that was spent on the Mueller report and the fact that that somehow did not sway the American public to even have an approval rating across partisan lines above 50% of people saying that they wanted to go to impeachment, it would seem to behoove Democrats that they might want to be careful what they wish for here.
But people are saying that this is different because the president himself has admitted to discussing a political rival with the leader of another country.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, I spoke to one of your producers earlier. I said, look, I think if you're driving the car and the police pull you over for having excess noise on your radio, and the first thing you say to them is there's a body in the trunk, well, now you're probably going to end up in the backseat of a car, and someone has a legal responsibility to see if there is a body still there. So I think when you have the President of the United States out of his own mouth saying that, yes, wait, maybe aid was pulled back on, and that, yes, on top of that, that I did have conversations about corruption, and in that corruption did mention former Vice President Joe Biden and his son, that there is some level of responsibility to see what's happening there. Having said that, we know that when it comes to President Trump, for better and worse, there is what happened, there's what the president says, and there's also how the public reacts to it. And so, you know, I will again caution to say that there is a chance that Democrats could open the proverbial trunk, and all that's there is the proverbial bloody glove with Hunter Biden's DNA in it. And at that point, it's going to be a very difficult thing for them to unring.
Well, you know, let's back up for a second, because I think you could say that both President Trump and Joe Biden have had issues with their children when it comes to children profiting off their political status. So there's a little bit of the kettle calling the pot black or whatever, however that goes. And sometimes the president deflects attention on some of his questionable behavior by pointing it out in others. It doesn't necessarily mean that he didn't do something wrong.
No, I think, look, the question before the American people and also the question before Congress is, did the president conduct himself in a manner that was unethical? Did he conduct himself in a manner that was illegal? And then there's the other matter of the matters, is this going to mean a hill of beans to the American public? So I think that those are the kind of, the thread that we're kind of going through here. I think with regards to, you know, the pot calling the kettle black, it's politics. I mean, right now we're talking about 2020. We can call it impeachment, even though, again, there was no vote taken, which I think was strategic on the part of the Speaker, because she doesn't want to alienate those voters in those kind of moderate districts where her members might have some difficulty if they voted for it. This is politics, clear and simple. The 2020 election is being litigated in the halls of Congress, and I think that's what we're dealing with right now.
Do you think this will just bolster President Trump and also bolster Joe Biden in the sense that they're both being sort of pitted against each other?
Look, I think that ironically, I mean, again, we don't know. There's so much that we don't know. We don't even know the agency from which the whistleblower comes from. We don't actually know. We don't have the transcript. There's so much. The one thing we know for certain is that we don't have all the facts.
Yes.
Having said that, I think as a general rule right now, we look at the impeachment of Bill Clinton coming out of the back end of impeachment with an approval rating over 70%. I think that this argument lends itself to bolster the president, assuming that that information doesn't come out, specifically because of the fact that, again, he's actually somehow convinced mainstream media to talk about the one story related to him that they did not want to talk about, which was Joe Biden and Hunter Biden.
Well, look, impeachment proceedings have never been popular. That was a lesson the Republican Party learned during Bill Clinton. And I think Democrats have resisted it for this reason. So do you think that just tells you how strongly they feel about this when they know that it's not necessarily a winning political strategy?
Look, I think, again, as I said before, when you have the president, again, I think sometimes you can take the president at his word, and sometimes the story that is told is not necessarily reflected in the actual proceedings and facts. But when those allegations do come to forefront, there is a responsibility to look into it. I think that's why you see the unanimity in the Senate with Republicans and Democrats both saying they want to see the report. But I think that as we take a step back and talk about it in the political spectrum and through a political lens, this notion, I think, again, that we spent millions of dollars, the Mueller report, there were things in that Mueller report that I think made many Americans blinds from, K.T. McFarland to the things where, Don McGahn, and there was, the list goes on. But when we come down to the end of it, even all of that information did not leave the majority of the American people saying that they wanted to impeach this president.
Right.
And I think you end up forcing Americans, you put them in corners, you pit them against each other, and in some ways you rebuild the coalition that is well documented for President Trump is very fractured.
And is the White House bolstering its legal team to deal with an impeachment inquiry?
Look, I don't think they're any more bolstered for an impeachment inquiry than they were a week ago, if for no other reason that, technically speaking, this is no more of an impeachment inquiry than what was going on with Nadler. I mean, I know it's newsworthy because you have the Speaker of the House who has previously done everything in her power to try to hold on to that runaway portion of her caucus that wanted to impeach from day one, from AOC here in New York to Congressman Green down in Texas. But I do think, again, ultimately, they knew what was coming, and on some basic level, I think the president has basically dared the Democrats in Congress to, again, open the proverbial trunk and see what you find.
There are some pundits who say the president is welcoming an impeachment inquiry. What do you think?
I think I'd be remiss to say if he wasn't welcoming. I think that anyone who looks at the trajectory here would have to say that the White House and most Republicans believe that an impeachment proceedings is going to lead to a second term for President Trump on a silver platter.
All right, Joseph Pinion, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here.